Alright, back to make kind of like part two to the video that I made yesterday. Yesterday I talked about the rear hip coil and how to make sure that you're doing that correctly. But the rear hip coil is just the beginning of the load. The load is not complete if the hitter is just doing that. So once the rear hip coil is coiled around and the hitter has gotten to their range of motion limit, meaning they feel like they've coiled as far as they can go, and you don't want to try to, I mean, you can feel when you've gotten to that spot where that's it, okay? The load then needs to continue working up the back to the top of the back, okay? I've mentioned in some of the drills from the very beginning to tell the kids to get the knob to the catcher using their back like that, okay? And as soon as, so the part of the load that I'm talking about now is the scap clamp, which the scap is just a shoulder blade, short term for the shoulder blade. So when the shoulder blade, so right here, this hand movement that you see is my shoulder blade getting pulled next to the spine. And until that happens, the load is not complete. So that's how the load works up from the hip to the top of the back. And that loading has to happen against a rock solid leg to create that resistance, because that's the whole point of loading, is to create the resistance, which resistance and stretch mean the exact same thing. So creating the stretch, creating the resistance. Now, it's one thing to create the resistance. You can get to a perfectly loaded position and then lose it. So it's not just about creating the resistance, which I'm going to do right here. And I'm kind of squatting so that you can see my full body on the camera there. So it's not just about creating the resistance. The hitter has to also learn how to keep all this resistance in place leading up to the launch of the barrel around the rear forearm, the barrel turn. Hitters can screw up a perfect load by loading and then forcing some pushing with the hip, or if they get to this spot here and then the hands start going forward, the shoulder blade immediately moves away from the spine, and again that causes disconnect from the power source, disconnect from the load, however you want to think about it. So ways to practice, some of y'all have sent videos and I can see some effort with the kids trying to coil correctly, but then they start turning around their waist and their shoulders get turned too far. So just some little tricks that I use with some of my students, especially the younger ones or beginners, is I'll put their back across their shoulder, okay? So you can see I have tape on both ends, so you can see the straight line, which is in line with my shoulders, which right now, if I was, my pitcher's over there, my catcher's here, it's perfectly in line with the pitcher and catcher, like straight line, okay? As I begin to coil, you see that it turned, okay? The only reason that this back, which is, again, my shoulders, or if you want to think of it, it's my entire torso, the only reason that it's turning is because of the hip coil. All right, what some of the kids are doing is they're getting here and then they start turning above the waist, which looks like this. okay? This is not good. This is slack. This is, as soon as, you don't want them doing anything close to this. So, to get them into their perfect loaded spot, you know, have them hold the bat across their chest or the PVC stick, coil the knob of the catcher turned towards the second baseman. It's not pointed right at the second baseman or the second base position, but it turned towards the second base side of the second base From here, okay, just with the top hand, keeping the top hand right in front of the back shoulder, pull the shoulder blade back. Okay, and you can see that to complete the load right here, there's no need for the shoulders to turn anymore. Okay, and that's a big important lesson right there, is to learn how to load beside the spine and not around the spine, which looks like this. Okay, so again, sit, start to coil, that causes the bat to turn, pull this back, add the bottom hand, and keep all the resistance in place and practice snapping from right there.